Welcome to the Surround Yourself podcast. We're here today with Jason Christian, and he is a civil and environmental engineer, has his own firm here in Watkinsville, Georgia, MCC Engineering Group. And we're just going to kind of go through his story and how he became an engineer and how he got set up here in Watkinsville, Georgia. Welcome, Christian, or Jason.
Good morning, Deanie. How are you today?
Pretty good. Just, stumbling over my words as usual.
That's all right.
But anyway, civil environmental engineering is your expertise and what you've been doing for a long time now. You said you started off your career, you did 25 years as a civil engineer in Houston, Texas. Was that correct?
Correct. So growing up, I kind of was destined to be an engineer. I was always taking things apart to the astonishment of my parents. They didn't much care for me dismantling the dishwasher, but I was always intrigued about how things work and learned a lot about how stuff was made by taking it apart. So I think I was kind of destined to be the engineer. Went to school, got an engineering degree, started working as a civil engineer in 1990, so I've been doing it for a while.
And was that your own firm, or were you working for somebody
else?
No,
I graduated and I did the corporate thing, so I went to work for a consulting firm. Part of the reason why I'm here now, that first job that I took out of college was a horrible experience for me. It was with a small engineering firm, and all of the things I think I've learned about running a business now, I learned by seeing it being done wrong. So even though that was a horrible experience as a brand new employee, I think it's been a great experience in the long run.
Paying your dues and, kind of seeing how other people do it, and then you go back and look and say, all right, this is how they did it, and it was wrong, so let's go back and let's do it the correct way.
That's exactly how I think I've stumbled into this.
And so with environmental and civil engineering, you focus primarily on water flow, water retention type stuff, or is that
Yeah, so hydrology and hydraulics is the science that it's called. I have always been interested in water. I've been fascinated with how it swirls as it's going down the drain. And listening to waves crashing on the beaches. So I've always been fascinated with water. In school, while I was working on my program of study, we went into the mathematical equations that describe that fluid flow. And this is nerdy, but they're really just as elegant and beautiful as the natural flow of the water. So
kind of like, do you have the big boards like they have in Big Bang Theory with all your equations written on it?
I've been through that, but actually, these equations for the physics of fluid flow are really elegant, and they're really compact, and they're, this is nerdy, but they're really beautiful.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, to each their own. I see that, and I just get confused. But, I still think it's impressive when somebody can interpret that to say, hey, this is what's going to happen to that body of water or this fluid or just whatever's going on. I'm really impressed with that. But moving on, you started your own firm in Houston?
So the first 6 years of my career, I worked for 4 different firms.
Oh, wow.
So I was struggling with who I was, what I wanted to do, how I thought that I could contribute to a group. And starting off with that very bad experience, I did go to work for other companies and did find mentors and did get some good experience, did sharpen my craft skills a little bit. But it was pretty obvious to me that I wasn't cut out for the corporate world. So I am a horrible employee. And I didn't sweat it if I were late. I didn't mind staying later and working all night. But just the punching the time clock and the structure of the corporate life just isn't what I was made for.
Right.
So in 1998, I got my professional engineer's license, and that's required to do engineering work in the U.S. And it wasn't 4 months later that I started my first business as an engineer, so I went out on my own.
That's awesome. Taking those first leaps into having your own firm, what were some of your struggles that you went through on your first venture out onto your own? What were some of the big hurdles and struggles you had to get through?
I think anybody who's owned a business understands the biggest and really the only struggle is cash flow.
Yeah.
So there has to be enough money in the bank account to pay the bills and to keep the doors open. And if you're starting out a new business, there's no guarantee that that's going to be there for any length of time.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my biggest struggle, I had a young family. I had 2 daughters that were under the age of 5 and a wife to support. And so my biggest struggle wasn't whether I think I could do it, whether I could find the work, and it was what it was going to do to the family, financially.
Were you jumping into this? Did you have a big nest egg, so to say, or just a cash reserve when you jumped into it, or did you just kind of say, "Hey, I'm tired of this corporate life. Let's just,
So there's a combination. I did have some savings.
Mm-hmm.
My wife would tell me she didn't think I had enough.
Mm-hmm.
So there comes a point you just gotta take the leap. Obviously, I did have enough. I had family that was willing to support me, and that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
That it wasn't just me starting this business. It was my immediate family and my extended family were in it with me, and so I didn't think, worst case, I'd borrow some money from my brothers, but that didn't have to happen, and everything worked out.
Yeah. So like going on and finding your first customers and stuff like that, was that a big struggle? I mean, I'm just assuming in this field you have to kind of prove yourself to really have people knocking down the door to get you.
So one of the things about my business, it's a consulting business. It's kind of a niche business, so there are not customers lined up.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a retail business where people are waiting for you to open the doors in the morning. All of my work has been referral.
Oh, wow.
All of it back then was referral. So people that I worked with, had a customer that needed something that they really didn't want to do or didn't have the time to do, or couldn't make enough money at it, and so they would refer. So for entrepreneurs, building that professional network is really important too, and that's how that business started. I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about. I'm on business number 2 right now.
Yeah.
And this business is starting out the same way.
Yeah. No, we'll get to that one. But just roughly, you have an idea or remember how long it took for you to be cash flow positive?
I remember first.
How long were you sitting there just shaking, not being able to sleep because you weren't sure if you were going to be able to pay the rent or, whatever your bills were at the time?
So the first business, I think the first 12 months, I made about $30,000. And in 1998, that was enough to support my family and pay our expenses. The next year, that tripled, and then the year after that, it tripled again. So, there's a huge upside
and then,
financially. But the uncertainty is always there also.
And speaking of uncertainty, our next point is 2008. The recession hits, building just kind of stops essentially. All the banks have, hemorrhaged all the money out, and so walk us through a little bit of that.
So my first
crash.
business was a land development engineering business. So it was a civil engineering company. We built roads and sewer lines and water lines for new developments for mostly residential subdivisions. In 2008, the banks quit lending money on those types of projects. At the time that the recession started, I was blissfully happy and overworked.
Mm-hmm.
So I really wasn't aware of how society was changing around me. My clients are very astute and very good at their businesses. You know, they were the land developers, and they saw this coming, and so they were ready to stop work in their tracks.
Right.
And all of this was a huge surprise to me when it happened. So I initially thought it would be a 6-month, 8-month thing before the banks got their reorganizations done and we're back to business. And that 8 months came and went, and a year came, and 2 years came, and I guess poor planning on my part that I wasn't aware how the business world was changing around me. I was stubborn, and so that business failed.
So were a lot of developers. They were like, "Oh, this money's just going to keep coming, keep coming, keep coming."
It was a immediately different way to do business.
Yeah, exactly. And there was, same thing happened in Texas with the oil boom, and what was that? The late 70s,
early 80s.
Early 80s.
Yeah.
Everybody, banks were just lending money like crazy, and then the price per barrel just plummeted.
Right.
So after that, you closed that business, and you took a job with UGA as a professor. Is that how that came to be? Or?
Not right away. So as the business didn't end immediately. I did have projects that were ongoing. So I finished out those projects, and as it took about 2.5 years. As those projects were winding down, I had a lot more free time on my hands. So I decided that I'd scratch an old itch I had and go back to school and get a PhD. So as the business was winding down, I was ramping up my studies at Rice University, and I was working part-time and going to school part-time. I graduated in 2012, and then after graduation with a PhD, I was trying to decide, do I need to go back and do private practice as an engineer, or do I need to try academia for a little bit? So I was fortunate enough to get a job with a brand new College of Engineering at UGA that was just then opening. So I was part of the first faculty class for the College of Engineering at UGA, and did that for about 7 years. I absolutely loved the teaching. The research and the politics were a struggle for me.
Yeah.
So in 2018, decided that I really needed to go back to my first calling, so I started MMC Engineering.
Awesome. Now back to the teaching, the research, and you said you love the teaching, the research, and the politics. Is there anything on that you can elaborate on, or?
Well, I think as a small business owner, being a teacher is critical. You're always explaining to your clients why they need to pay your bill, why they need to pay to pay for your services and not your competitors. So there's that communication aspect that's got to be front and center for an entrepreneur as they're starting a new business and as they're growing a business. Teaching is the same way. So you have to have a level of empathy. You have to have a level of understanding about what you're talking about, and the reward is seeing, your prodigies, the students that you're mentoring. Really, you can see it in their eyes when they get it, and that's a thrill.
Well, yeah, being able to explain a complex, what would the word be, problem or whatever, to a way that, so you have to be able to explain it to somebody who wants to become an engineer, but this is also teaching you how to explain it to people who have no idea what you're talking about.
Correct. and what they're seeing is that your proposal for work is it's got a high price tag, and they need to feel good about hiring you and paying the invoice when it comes due. And it's really important that they're educated as to what you're actually doing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize for not calling you Dr. Jason when I introduced you. But anyway, so now you formed MMC Engineering Group here in where we're recording today in Watkinsville, Georgia. How's that going? How's the jump off been? What have you have you taken a bunch of lessons that you learned from your first business and then from teaching and just kind of merged it all together into making a new firm happen?
I think you have to do that.
Yeah.
So every experience you have, some are good experiences, some are bad experiences, but you can learn from everything. Mm-hmm. The first business, I think I grew it too fast. So within the first 3-4 years, I had a staff of 17.
Wow.
And I found out that I was just as profitable with 4 employees as I was with 17. And just all the HR headaches,
mm-hmm.
Managing that number of individuals was problematic. So one of the goals for this business is to stay small.
Yeah.
If you do stay small, you can be very selective about clients that you work for and projects that you do. And the level of stress goes way down, and financially, like
Absolutely.
I said, if you can find that sweet spot.
Well, yeah, managing 17 people versus managing 4 is, night and day as far as
Night and day.
The number of problems is multiplied by 17 versus multiplied by 4.
My payroll during those days was about $75,000 a month.
Wow.
So after I'd write the last checks of a payroll, I'd immediately start worrying about where that next payroll is gonna come from.
Wow.
And so it was just a constant.
That's one of those things
worry.
that people don't think about when you look at a bigger anything. It's wow, that company. If you look at their payroll, how much they are paying out every month. It's just one of those things that a lot of people just don't notice. They're just like, oh, Amazon needs to pay more. It's like, well, you've seen how much Amazon's paying out every month,
Yeah.
Not trying to get political or anything like that. Well, this has been loads of fun. Do you have any other words of wisdom or anything else you'd like to share with our audience of 2 people?
Well, I think words of wisdom would be starting a business can be very rewarding. It's going to be a lot of stress, and it's going to be a lot of worry, and it's going to be a lot of work. For me, though, there really wasn't a good alternative. So I would have been miserable going and sitting at a desk and sitting through the staff meetings and doing all of those things that a staff level employee does. There certainly is a big upside. There's kind of unlimited income potential, but really, if you'll talk, hopefully you'll get this conversation with other entrepreneurs. If your primary goal is to make money, you're probably not going to be successful and happy. And for me, the happy factor there was what drove me to do it. So money, it's nice and it to have, and if you do what you do very well, you're never going to have to worry about money. But
your primary focus should
be your craft. So what is it that you do that makes you happy? And if you're happy, you're going to be great at it. And if you're great at it, then you'll never have to worry about finding customers.
Awesome. Well, this has been an awesome interview. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation, Danny.
All right.